Tell me though, like, when was that limiting belief of your own that I'm not good enough or I can't do this? When did that start changing for you? And then how did it change?
That's such a good question. I think it really started changing when I finally realized I can't wait for my life to change. I have to change. Because really what it did was it helped me shift the power dynamic that I believed needed to be true in order to have the life I wanted. Because for most of my life, I was looking to the outside for things to change in order for me to feel better in my life, for me to fit into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I stopped looking to the outside and I stopped expecting situations or people or experiences to change in order for me to feel better and started realizing I'm the one who has to change, then that's when I started going to a deeper level and really getting really clear on why I wasn't changing and what those limiting beliefs were and how they were holding me back. So I call what I teach now the art of undoing, because it's really about undoing the power of the unconscious stuff that's holding us back, those limiting beliefs. And
Mm-hmm.
now what I realize, and I didn't at the time, is that so many of us believe that, like, for instance, when I was at Google and was leaving, so many people were like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you unlocking the golden handcuffs and leaving your corporate job? And I think there are a lot of us, no matter where
Yeah.
you work, if it's giving you a nice lifestyle and you want something more, most of us feel that there's that sort of golden handcuffs attached. What I know now that I did not know until much more recently is that the golden handcuffs are not in our job. They're not in our lifestyle. They're our identity. And
Mm.
so when we can start to get honest with ourselves about how our identity, who we think we should be, who we believe ourselves to be, and who we cannot be, how those things are holding us back, then it opens us up to living in full range and expanding our possibility and our impact.
Wow, that was deep and mind-blowing at the same time, and I'm still processing it.
Another thing I hear so often is, I need to wait till I'm more confident.
No,
But yeah, exactly. No, I mean,
no.
yes, it is great. It would be wonderful if we could like think our way to confidence, but that's not how it actually
No,
happens. We
confidence comes from
act,
action.
exactly. We act our way to
Like,
confidence.
yeah, I mean, that's my number one thing. Like, if you are feeling a lack of confidence in something, that means you need to do something to get that confidence back. Whether
Yes.
that is educating yourself or whether that is putting yourself in the lion's den and figuring it out, that you just have to do that. It's going to be
Yes.
terribly scary.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to mention something here because this is something that I feel isn't discussed enough. And I think
Yeah.
it's super, super important because I make up that your audience is probably filled with a lot of super passionate high achievers who like to do big things in the world. And so I feel like that this is probably really relevant. Those of us who are, we like to go big or go home, right? So, there's
Yes.
like, if somebody else wasn't there to cheer us on, did it even happen? And right. So the challenge with high achievers is we like to achieve. And so as soon as we get an insight, as soon as we think, oh, here's a nugget of something, I can take this and I can run with it.
Mm-hmm.
What is true is that limiting beliefs are self-fulfilling. So, we create the world based on what we believe. So if there are places where, a new insight is like, oh, maybe this isn't true. Maybe this limiting belief isn't true. But if we take a big action, we're much more likely to prove the limiting belief than to disprove it. So if you go straight into the lion's den and attempting to like kill the lion because you've
Right.
now found this insight that the lion's not real, you may actually get mauled.
Okay.
So
I get that.
instead, so what we're likely to do, like, have you ever had one of those situations where you're like, I'm going to go talk to this person and I'm going to tell them, whatever the truth is. And then you come out and you feel horrible about yourself. And and you're like, oh, that
Right.
totally confirms why I'm never doing that again, ever, ever. Yeah. So that's because what we end up doing is actually proving the limiting belief to ourselves.
Okay, that's very interesting. But I see it. I get what
Yeah.
you just said. Yeah. So how would you
Okay.
do it then if you were not,
Mm-hmm.
what is the
If you
alternative?
wanted to disprove
What
it,
is,
yeah.
yeah, what do you do to disprove that?
Yeah. So the way I like to think of it is, imagine you are in a lit hallway and in order to get out of the hallway, you have to go through a dark room. So if the only way to get through was to go through a dark room and you couldn't turn a light on and you couldn't use a flashlight, how would you do it?
Use my phone. I'm just kidding. No, I wouldn't do
Yeah.
that.
If you couldn't use your phone.
I would just go with my hands out a little bit and make sure I'm not
Okay.
touching anything. I mean, make sure I'm not
Okay.
running into anything.
Okay. Would you run?
Or no, I would walk very slowly.
There you go. You just answered your
Yeah.
own question.
Yeah.
So when we think about it, if we think, what would I actually do if I were walking into a dark room? We're usually going to go very slowly and very carefully, taking baby steps because we don't want to
Yeah.
step on a spider or a Lego or, whatever other random things are on the floor. And, because we're going slow enough, if we run into something, we don't hurt ourselves
Right.
because we're going slow enough that it's information. It's a data point that doesn't tell us run back to the hallway. Instead, it says just sidestep, just pivot slightly. And the more you do that and the more steps you take and the more that you don't run into something, and the more confidence we tend to build, right? And so we start taking bigger steps and we start acclimating to the dark. And then after a while, the steps are bigger and now we've gotten further into the room or maybe even out of the room altogether.
Right.
So when we use that same approach to how do we want to disprove our beliefs, it's the exact same. It's how can I take steps that are small enough that even if I run into something, that's not going to hurt.
That makes so much sense, actually. And I love that. It's instead of just running into the lion's den, as I had said earlier, and getting mauled, because truly that is probably what might happen. But I love that. Take baby steps. Go through it slowly. Encourage yourself slowly with the baby steps that you're taking. Yeah, that's so true. I want to talk a little bit more about the authentic. That word is such a key word these days. It's such a buzzword. Everybody uses it so much. I also sometimes feel a little shy using it because I'm like, I don't even know what it means sometimes. Like, what am I saying? And so, you're like, I want to be my authentic self, which is a great endeavor. But what does it mean? And so if you can actually first define what authentic means for us, and then also tell us how we can apply it in our lives, professionally and in our personal lives.
I love this question. I guess here's where my communication degree came in handy, because what I realized is it doesn't actually matter what word we use, it's what the word means. And so I love that that's where you started. So I agree. It sounds like such a cliche term, and we throw it around all the time, but like, what do we mean by that? And be authentic, like what version? Like, what is that? How do I do that? Is this like another role I play? And that's the thing that I struggle
with. What version?
And anytime we're asking ourselves those questions, like that's another layer. Like it really points to that's not who you truly are. So the way I think of authenticity is, if we look at the etymology of the term authenticity, the actual origin in Latin, I think it is to act in one's own authority, as in to be the author of our lives.
Love it.
So, if we think about it, if we think what role we're currently playing in our lives, for the most part, it's not the author. We're either the hero of our story or we're the victim of our story, or in some cases, maybe even the villain. And when we realize that authenticity isn't about doing something or playing a role, but rather being at choice in every moment of our lives, then that's when we take the power back. And that's true for all of us. And it's not about these big, huge, pivotal moments. It's practice in every single moment of every single day.
Oh yeah, it is practice. I love that. I do think though, sometimes people have to go through a certain type of, I say trauma, because some things really have to shake you in order for you to change or see life in a different perspective.
Yes. And you asked for some practical steps. So I can actually tell you, because my belief for the majority of my life was my life is in the next thing. My life is just around the corner. The one that's actually right for me, the one where I fit into my life perfectly. And so, the corner might've been just around, like, it was in the next destination was a city or a boyfriend or a job or whatever. And anytime we believe that our happiness, our truth, or anything that is actually real about us is somewhere out there, we're looking in the wrong place.
Yes. Preach it. Love it. So give me some practical steps. How can we really start intentionally moving towards a better version of ourselves, the more authentic version of ourselves?
So the foundation has to start with awareness, because what we can't see, we can't change. So we must be aware of it in order to be able to change it. And that's honestly, for a lot of people, that right there is very challenging, because, you know, most of us, like, I use the metaphor of a closet, and most people are like, oh, I know that closet. And it's like, you know, there's a closet somewhere where we don't dare even get close to it, much less open it, because if we open it, then we're afraid all the stuff is going to fall down on top of us and bury us alive. When we can't face it, though, we're putting so much energy into avoiding it, into distracting ourselves from it. And that really just dilutes our impact across all of our lives, because I know you asked about personal and professional lives. Like, most of us think we can compartmentalize, but we're really not. And so we're either, when we try to avoid facing the stuff that's happening in our lives and becoming aware of it, the pain is actually being spread across our entire lives. It's sort of like a broad sweep, or, you know, across the canvas, because we think it's going to hurt too much if we, you know, look at it in the face. But again, if you're having to numb yourself with alcohol or Netflix or ice cream or work or whatever, then it's a lot of pain already and you're not really living. So my first encouragement is really bring awareness. Like, what is the stuff I'm avoiding? What is the stuff I'm distracting myself from looking at? You know, people come to me. I've had so many people who come to me and they say, I feel like I need a different job. 30 minutes into the conversation, they realize it's a problem with their marriage. And we have to really get honest with ourselves. What is it I'm not facing? But awareness doesn't even have to start there. It's literally bringing awareness to, how do I feel in any one moment? Feelings are about actually feeling. But again, most of us, especially those of us who are very proud of our brains and where our brains have taken us in their lives, myself included, don't even realize there's a body attached to them. So, like, literally start there, because authenticity is a feeling practice. One of the reasons that we keep ourselves from being authentic is because we're so stuck in our heads because of the little stories that are in there. And those are all of the, I call them fear stories, those limiting beliefs. Feeling actually is the key to getting in touch with what is true for us, truth with a capital T. And it's also what enables us to actually keep ourselves from reacting. Because if you think about it, when we react from a place of fear, response happens in our body before our, you know, executive functioning of our brains like actually catches up. So like, we're already riled up before we even realize what's happened. And so we're like, you know, the train's left the station. If we are more in touch with our bodies, we can actually recognize when that stuff is happening before we take action on it. And so the awareness, again, starts with, like, what am I feeling in any moment? What are my values? If you don't know your values, really start there.
Well, on that note, so tell us, what is your favorite book or books? Personal, or it could be just fun, fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter.
So the book that changed my life is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That was the first book I read after my daughter's hospital experience, and it totally shifted my perspective and how I showed up in the world. So that would probably be my favorite book. On a fiction side, this isn't necessarily like a favorite, but I just finished reading Daisy Jones and the Six. Have you read that?
No. Daisy Jones?
Daisy Jones and the Six. And I had no idea what it was. I happened to put on Facebook, like, hey, does anybody have books they recommend? And several people said this book. I started reading the book, and I was like, why is everybody recommending this this book of interviews, and it's about a band, and it's literally told as though it's interviewing like 6 people from the band. I got to page 100 and I finally was like, I'm going to look these people up. Like, who is Daisy Jones? The whole thing, it's a fictional book. It's written so well. I had no idea it was a fictional book. These are fictional characters and fictional interviews. It is a fabulous book. I have not ever read something that's like that. It's amazing and super interesting to see how she did it.
Thanks for the recommendation. I love that. I love reading. So I love collecting. And then I'm like, my pile's this high. Like, I'm getting there.
Same.
So how does anyone connect with you? How can we get consultation from you, or be a part of your program, or just learn more, you know, advice and wisdom from you?
If your audience would like to go deeper with me, and I would love for them to, you can visit my website at erikagerdes.com. And you can also find me on social media. I'm relatively active there, mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Awesome. And your Instagram handle and LinkedIn handle are?
My name, Erika Gerdes. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, everything will be in the show notes also. But just in case if someone is just like, I got to put this up right now. So
yes, absolutely. And on my website, I have a lot of blogs and information, and I'm sharing things regularly. If you get onto my newsletter, then I send regular, insightful thoughts that I'm having and discussions that I'm having with people that I think can serve. My goal, like I said, is to serve with everything I do.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I have learned tremendous amounts of knowledge today, and I just had such a fun time talking to you also. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. It was my pleasure. And thank you very much for having me. This was a delightful and fun conversation.